Well, today I am coming to you from Brother Will's office. And the reason being is because that's where all the food is. The guy's always got a bunch of hungry teenagers coming around looking for snacks, so he keeps it well stocked. And so, look what I'm talking about here. This is just a sampling of what, we got, it's a gold mine here. And so, but don't tell him, all right? Because this is our little secret. If word gets back to him, I'm going to know you said something. So just kind of keep it shh, and that'd be great. But I want to take a break from snacking just to kind of share a quick thought with you from John chapter number 11. John chapter number 11 is the story where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And so, you know the story. Mary and Martha, they send word to Jesus that Lazarus is sick. Come quickly. And we're told in verse number 6, though, it says, when he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. So by the time Jesus gets to where Lazarus was, he had been dead 4 days. Martha meets Jesus as he's arriving and says, Lord, if you had been here, our brother would not have died. Now we know that Jesus stood at the grave and cried out, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus came out of that tomb, still wrapped in his grave clothes. So we know Jesus ultimately rose Lazarus from the dead. But in the middle of this difficulty, he purposely delayed. He chose to show up after Lazarus had died and raise him from the dead, instead of showing up when he was sick and healing him. Now, obviously, this delay had to have been hard for Mary, had been hard for Martha. Even think about from Lazarus' point of view. Here he is on his deathbed. He dies with the thought in his mind that Jesus, who could have done something, did nothing. That was the last thought he had in his mind before he died. Now, we don't always understand God's delays, right? Even in our current situation with this virus. It's not just that it happened, but at this point it's like, how long is this going to happen? And I can't tell you why God has allowed it to happen, why God has allowed it to go on this long, but I do want to learn how to conduct myself during God's delays. So I want to quickly challenge you with this idea of how to handle God's delays. Now there's a lot of things in this passage, but I just want to quickly just give you two thoughts to consider, to think about today. And so what to do during the delays. Number one, don't question God's love. Don't question God's love. Can you hear the emotion in both Mary and Martha as they both say separately, Lord, if you would have been here, our brother would not have died. No doubt this was so difficult for them. But there's a big difference and yet a very thin line between asking God questions and questioning God. There's a big difference there. It's okay to ask questions. God's not afraid of our questions. Our faith is sound. It can hold up to questions. God's okay with you bringing questions to him, to spiritually mature people in your life, spiritual authorities like a pastor in your life, and with the right attitude. But oftentimes the problem is not the question, it's our attitude, like I said. It's like the teenager that goes to their parents and asks a question and gets told no, and inevitably they're going to be like, well, why? It's not that they really want to know why, they just want to do what they want to do. For example, flip it around. The teenage son shows up to dad and says, hey, can I have the keys to go over to my friend's house? When social distancing's over with, of course. Say, hey, can I borrow the keys to the car to go to my friend's house? Say, sure. Do you really think he's going to be like, why? I'm only 16 years old. I'm really not that good of a driver. And frankly, I'm brain dead 15 hours out of the day. No, he's not going to ask why, because you told him yes. He's only going to ask why, because when you get told no, because you want to do what you want to do. Sometimes we can approach God that way. We want to know why is this happening when really we don't want to know why. We just want what we want and we don't want it to change. But we got to understand it's okay to ask questions if we do it the right way. But we're not to question God, especially not God's love for us. In the text here in verse number 3, it says, the Bible says they sent word to Jesus and said, he whom thou lovest is sick. Verse 5 again says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. The Bible makes it very clear and went through pains to point out the fact that Jesus loved them. So this wasn't happening because of a lack of love. And so don't let the devil convince you that God's delaying working in your life because he doesn't love you or because he's not good. Don't question God's love even in the delay. Number 2, quickly, I want you to consider that we ought to value God's glory above all else. In verse number 4, Jesus says, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. And again in verse 15 it says, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe, nevertheless let us go unto him. So no doubt there's people during our situation that have gotten saved, people who are thinking about spiritual things, thinking about eternity, people who are open to the gospel that wouldn't have been had this just popped up and went away in a week. God's delays are ultimately for his glory. Here they're saying in the text, oh, I wish you would have been here, none of this would have happened. And Jesus is saying, I'm glad that I wasn't there for your sake and so that God might get the glory. We need to learn to pray as God's people. We need to learn to value God's glory over our comfort, to value God's glory over our convenience, to value God's glory above our prosperity, to value God's glory even above our own health. That could be a difficult thing to do, but we ought to pray and strive to get to the place where we can pray, Lord, glorify your name in me by any means necessary. We know that we exist to glorify God. The Bible makes it clear. We know that. And yet so often we value the temporal things of this world above the eternal glory of God. Look, I don't claim to understand God's timetable, but during those seasons when it appears that God is delaying his working in your life, don't question his love for you and value his glory above all else. If you don't mind, I'm going to get back to snacking here for just a minute and try to make it appear like I was never here. But God bless you and have a great day.